Good evening and welcome to the Connecticut Department of Transportation's Public Information Meeting for project number 82-321, the replacement of bridge number 02100, Route 154 over Bible Rock Brook in the City of Middletown. My name is Susan Morneau and I'm a project engineer with the Department of Transportation. I would like to welcome everyone who's taken the time to tune in for tonight's presentation. We hope this will be informative and we are able to answer all your questions and concerns so that by the time we are done, you will have a better understanding of our project. Before I get into the presentation and introduce the project team, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items and explain tonight's format. Our presentation will last approximately 15 minutes, and once it's completed, we will host a live question and answer session. You will have 3 means of communicating with us during the live Q&A session. You can send an email, leave a voicemail, or if you are watching this on MS Teams, you can post your question in the chat field to the right of your screen. The project email, phone, and chat will be screened by the project team during the Q&A session, and the questions asked by any of these methods will be posted to the MS Teams Q&A chat window. We will read all the questions out loud for the project team to answer. You can ask questions at any time during the presentation, but we will answer these during the live Q&A session. As I mentioned, the 3 means of communicating with the project team will be by email, which is dotproject0082-0321 at ct.gov. Again, I'll spell it out this time, dotproject 0082-0321 at ct.gov, or by telephone at 860-944-1111, or by chat on the MS Teams live event chat. In this format, you can ask a question by clicking on the little question mark, which is shown as Q&A. This will bring up your live event Q&A field. Select the Ask a Question button at the bottom right hand of the screen, and a field will pop up where you can type your question. Then hit Enter or the little arrow button to send. You can also check the box at the bottom to post your question anonymously if you prefer. There will be a slight delay, but eventually your question will appear in the featured section with all the other questions asked tonight. We also have the project webpage link where a recording of tonight's entire presentation along with the Q&A session will be stored. The webpage will also contain the same information that I've previously explained on how to provide comments or ask questions. Lastly, please remember the comment period to ask questions or provide comments will be open through October 14, 2020 via either email or telephone. The MS Teams chat function is only available during tonight's live Q&A session. We would greatly appreciate it if you could fill out a demographic survey the department has through SurveyMonkey. The department is fairly new at hosting a virtual public information meeting, and for some of the project team, tonight is the first go-around. The results of this survey will help us improve these public meetings going forward. There is also a civil rights flyer available. Both links to the survey and civil rights flyer are located on the previously mentioned project webpage. No person shall, on the basis of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project. Thank you for bearing with me while I went over the ground rules. I would now like to begin the presentation by introducing the project team. With the Connecticut Department of Transportation, we have Bart Sweeney, Division Chief of Bridges, Robbie Barakat, CE Bridge Principal Engineer, Louis Baccio, CE Bridge Project Manager, and myself, Susan Morneau, CE Bridge Project Engineer. From the Department of Transportation's right-of-way section, we have Matt Janikopoulos. Matt will speak a little later and provide an overview of the procedures followed by the department for right-of-way impacts to properties affected by this project. I would next like to introduce the team from Close Jensen & Miller, who is the consultant liaison engineer for the department. With CJM, we have Mark Levesque, the project manager. We also have Jeffrey Fontaine, the project engineer. You will hear from Jeff in just a few moments as he describes the proposed project. Here is an aerial photo of our project location on Route 154, otherwise known as Saybrook Road. Bridge number 02100 is shown in the yellow circle. The next 2 slides will show the project area at street level. In this first slide, we are looking north along Route 154. As you can see from the photo, Route 154 carries 1 lane of traffic in each direction. In this second slide, we are looking south along Route 154. The roadway width is approximately 27.5 feet, and the average daily traffic along Saybrook Road is approximately 6,600 vehicles. This is based on the 2015 CTDOT traffic log. This next slide depicts a plan view of the existing bridge. Bible Rock Brook is shown in blue and flows to the south. The existing bridge is shown in yellow. It is a reinforced concrete slab on concrete abutments. The bridge spans 14 feet and the out-to-out width is 30 feet. Following are a couple more photos of the existing bridge. First is a photo looking upstream at the bridge. This photo is looking downstream at the bridge. Now it is time to discuss the reasons for the project. The photos on the next two slides will help you understand why the bridge needs to be replaced. The superstructure of the bridge is deteriorating. From these photos, you can see spalled concrete and exposed rebar. This slide has additional photos of spalled concrete and exposed rebar at different locations. You can also see efflorescence in the cracks along the east fascia. I will now turn over the presentation to Jeff Fontaine from CJM, who will explain the proposed project to replace the bridge.
Thank you, Sue. As Sue mentioned, I'm Jeff Fontaine with Close Jensen & Miller. Based on our review of the bridge conditions and project site, it is recommended that the bridge be replaced with a 24-foot clear span precast concrete three-sided rigid frame structure with concrete wing walls at all four corners of the bridge. Metal beam guide rail will also be installed at each corner of the bridge, and the roadway will be repaved within the limits of the project. Here is a view of the bridge elevation. As you can see, the proposed bridge will have a larger clear span from the existing 14-foot span. The reason for this wider opening is to provide a larger hydraulic envelope for water to pass beneath the bridge. The existing bridge is considered hydraulically inadequate, which basically means that if a design storm of a certain magnitude were to hit, the existing bridge opening would not be large enough to allow the required water flow through. The proposed 24-foot span would allow us to be considered hydraulically adequate out here. And here's a view of the proposed cross-section. Basically, if you were to take a knife and cut the bridge down the middle, this is what you'd see. The key thing to note here is that Route 154 will be widened slightly at the bridge to allow for an 11-foot travel lane and 5-foot shoulder in each direction. The project would be undertaken by maintaining signal-controlled alternating one-way traffic over the course of 2 stages of construction. An 11-foot lane with 1-foot shoulders would be maintained at all times. There is a driveway within the vicinity of the bridge project which would need to be closed off for safety reasons. Therefore, we would install a temporary driveway to maintain access to the nearby residences, which we'll be able to see in the next few slides. During construction, water would be maintained through the site using a 42-inch diameter bypass pipe beneath the structure. For the first stage of construction, work will be performed along the east side of Route 154 as shown in red. Again, because of site constraints, we would be required to close off the existing residential driveway, but before any work could begin on the bridge, we would install the temporary driveway to ensure residential access can be maintained at all times. The temporary driveway is shown here in yellow. As mentioned before, traffic along Route 154 would be handled by signals on each end of the project, but we will also be installing a signal for vehicles exiting the driveway, as you can see on the right side of the plan view. Stage 2 would shift traffic along the newly constructed portion of the bridge while work is performed along the remaining section. The temporary driveway and signal would remain in use for safety to prevent vehicles from errantly entering the alternating one-way traffic pattern. One item also worth mentioning is that the majority of the bridge will be precast, which would allow us to significantly reduce the construction duration and avoid any lengthy impacts to the area. There are aerial facilities within the project area which run along the west side of Route 154. The overhead wires also cross the road pretty much at the bridge to provide service to the nearby residences. As design progresses, we will be coordinating with the utility companies to work out relocation plans so that these lines would not conflict with the anticipated construction activities. Best management practices would be used during construction, and we will be required to obtain environmental permits to perform this work and ensure that any impacts to Bible Rock Brook are minimized. As far as rights-of-way goes, the red lines shown in the plans represent the state's rights-of-way. No permanent impacts are anticipated as the entire bridge is within the state's rights-of-way. However, during construction, easements will be required to accommodate the anticipated work for replacing the bridge, primarily for installation and removal of the temporary driveway along the east side and slope regrading along the west side. At this point, I would like to hand it over to Matt Giannakopoulos to discuss the DOT rights-of-way process.
My name is Matt Giannakopoulos, and I am a project coordinator with the department's Division of Rights-of-Way. It is our office's responsibility to acquire the property rights needed for transportation projects. The proposed project design requires the acquisition of property rights, so I'd like to give a brief overview of the department's right-of-way acquisition process. Please keep in mind, though, that the specific impacts are still being fine-tuned and may change as the design progresses. Any property rights that will be required will be acquired in accordance with Connecticut General Statutes Sections 13A-73 and 13A-98E. And whenever there is federal money used in any aspect of a project, the department must adhere to the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisition Policies Act of 1970 as amended. Once the design has moved to the point where we are ready to begin the acquisition process, each affected property owner will receive a formal letter of intent to acquire from our office, along with a property map which depicts the exact property rights to be acquired. At that point, our office will determine the fair market value of those property rights and use that value to establish an offer of just compensation. That offer will be sent out to the property owner in writing, and a right-of-way agent will be available to meet with the property owner and explain the project, go over the specific impacts to their property, and explain the state's offer. The property owner will have a reasonable time, typically at least 30 days, to consider the state's offer and enter into negotiations. If an agreement is reached, the states will prepare all the necessary paperwork and record the deed and the property map on the town land records. However, if negotiations reach an impasse, in order to keep everything on schedule, the department may acquire the necessary property rights through its power of eminent domain. In that event, the state files a notice of condemnation in the Superior Court, along with a monetary deposit in the amount of the state's offer. The owner would have 6 months from that date to file an appeal if they felt that the state's offer was inadequate. Whether or not the owner chooses to appeal, the money that was deposited in the court is available to be withdrawn by the owner, subject to the discretion of the Superior Court. I know a lot of people, when they hear the phrase eminent domain, thinks that it means the state just takes their property for $1. However, the owners are entitled to at least the state's original offer of just compensation, and the state only takes title to the property rights that are needed for the project. If there are any questions regarding the department's right-of-way acquisition process, I'd be happy to address them once the presentation has concluded.
Thanks, Matt. This is Susan Morneau again, and this next slide shows our estimated project cost and schedule. I would just like to let everyone know we are currently at a little less than 30% complete in the design process. And at this time, we are anticipating construction to begin in the spring of 2022 and be complete in the fall of that same year. We are currently estimating a construction cost of approximately $2.5 million, which will be entirely funded with state funds. No funding will come from the town. Please note that the schedule at this point is preliminary and is predicated upon the availability of funding. Thank you for your patience and for listening to tonight's presentation. We will now begin the live question and answer session and will stay on as long as questions are coming in. Please remember, as I explained earlier, there are 3 ways to ask a question. They are by email, using chat on the MS Teams live event, or by telephone. Contact information is shown on this slide. For those of you who don't have a video connection, the telephone number is 860-944-1111.
All right, thank you, Sue. This is Jeff Fontaine from Close Jensen and Miller. At this point, we would like to open the floor to any questions. As Sue mentioned, we do have 3 methods for submitting your questions. Now, one thing to kind of be aware of is that it will take a few minutes by the time a question is submitted before it's processed. So if you don't see your question right away, don't feel that we're not addressing it or anything. It's just going through that, and we're basically going to try to go through each question in order as we receive them. So now it looks like one question is in the process of being submitted. The question is, will there be night work? The way the schedule is set up, we anticipate that the contractor would be working normal hours from Monday to Friday, excluding holidays.
We try to set up a schedule to avoid night work as much as possible, especially in the event that there are residences nearby, which in this case there are. In the event that the project ends up being delayed a bit, we may look to any night work, but at this point, no, there is none anticipated at this time. And again, we would definitely be aware of noise levels and try to reduce that as much as possible. Certain measures would be included in the contract to meet certain requirements for that. And again, we would try to be as amenable to any residences nearby. So it looks like we are receiving another question via the chat. All right, so the question is, I see there are utility relocations. Will I lose power? So we will be coordinating with the utility companies to try to figure out what the proper relocation measures out here would be with as few impacts as possible. Typically, what happens with utility relocations is the companies will set temporary poles at a certain location and then shift the wires from one set of poles to the other. And then again, once the project is complete, they'd be shifted back to their current position. Now, as far as power outages, usually there's no extensive power outages. The electric company may need to power down for a certain amount of time when shifting the wires from one set of poles to the other, but it would not really be an extensive shutdown period. So it may happen for a small amount of time, once or twice, hopefully not more than that. But yeah, there wouldn't be anything extensive to where you would be out of power for a full day or longer than that.
Hi, and this is Mark Levesque from Close Jensen and Miller, and I want to add on to what Jeff is saying. The utility relocations, we'll sometimes put them in temporary relocations, and depending on the site, we may leave the poles there permanently if they're still within the state's right of way, if it's more convenient long term. So there may only be one switch, depending on the site constraints, and we would coordinate with utilities and do what's best for the project.
All right, thank you, Mark. It looks like we got another question via the chat. How old is the existing bridge and how long will the new bridge last? So the existing bridge was built in 1939. And as far as how long will the new bridge last, our goal is to usually have a new bridge last 75 to 100 years. So looking at the life of the existing bridge since 1939, it's reached about 80 years, a little bit over. So that's pretty much within the parameters we like to design to. And again, since this, I mean, that's pretty much what our goal is with every new bridge out here, and that's what we're looking at for the life of this new bridge. Now, one other thing I would like to remind everybody of is if you can't think of a question now, or if you end up going to bed tonight or even a week later, think, I should have asked that. The comment period is open for 2 weeks. Comments through emails or the telephone number that was provided are still available during those 2 weeks, and we will respond to those as we receive them. The chat will just not be available during those times. But again, if you do have something that you want to ask, feel free. We definitely would help you out with that. Now, one other request that we have received is a request for information. So even if you don't have any questions but would like to see the plans or any progress with the project, definitely feel free to contact the DOT via the email on the project website, or the town will also be submitting sets of plans to the town as design progresses. So definitely feel free to ask for any information through either of those means if you're curious about the project and its progress. Now, it looks like we did receive an email question, the question being, what will happen to my property as far as landscaping after the work is done? So There will be some impacts to private property within the vicinity of the bridge. What we do during design is we coordinate with the DOT landscape unit, and they put together a set of planting plans to basically ensure that upon the completion of construction, we're not leaving a mess or anything like that. We do our best to make sure that the area is restored to its existing condition or improved upon. So any areas that are damaged because of, say, the temporary driveway being installed on private property or anything like that, we would restore the grass to that. We may install plantings and other items just to beautify the area, because again, we don't want to leave an area worse off than when we started.
And Jeff, this is Matt Giannakopoulos from Division of Rights of Way. Just to add on a little bit to that, sometimes as part of the project landscaping, such as like more mature trees, gets impacted, and it's just not, obviously, if we have a planting plan, we won't be able to recreate a 50-year-old tree. So anything that isn't able to be recreated by the planting plan, it does get taken into account when they prepare an offer of compensation to you.
All right, thank you, Matt. We also received a voicemail question. If there are any fish in the brook, how will they be protected during construction? So as part of the design process, we do coordinate with DEEP Fisheries, and they comment on the project to ensure that any impacts to fish are addressed and minimized as much as possible. One of the common items is that they give us a time of year restriction that we're able to perform in-water work that would disrupt any fish passage or basically the habitat of the fish. So during construction, we would not be allowed to perform any in-water work during that specific time. What we're proposing out here is a bypass pipe during construction, so fish will be allowed to traverse through that pipe if necessary. But we also will be applying for environmental permits out here, again, to ensure that as few impacts to Bible Rock Brook are made because of this project. Now, again, I would just like to remind everybody that there are 3 methods of submitting your questions. Either the live event chat, we do have the phone number 860-944-1111, where you could leave a message and we will respond to that. And we do have the DOT project email that you could also submit your questions to. So it looks like we did receive another email question. Will the contractor occupy my property with construction equipment or park it there after the workday? Typically, the contractor would not be allowed to cross the easement lines or property lines within the project work area. As you can see, those are shown as the red lines on the plan right now. So the contractor would be required to kind of stay within those limits. If there's any easements, which would be vetted out through the rights of way process, the contractor would be allowed to stay within those easement limits. Now, there's also the chance that the contractor may come to a specific property owner, and outside of any state direction, they may form an agreement with that property owner to, say, use their property for equipment or materials or anything like that. But that would be outside of our negotiation process. So that's strictly between the property owner and the contractor, which I believe, like, obviously the property owner, if you would not want that, then you could definitely say that that's not allowed. I don't know if Matt would like to add in anything for rights of way on that.
Thanks, Jeff. And this is Matt again. And no, you pretty much covered it. The red line shown on the screen there, that's the existing highway line. That's the line that delineates the private property from the state highway property. What's not shown on here, because it hasn't been worked out yet, would be the limits or the lines that show any proposed easements. So the contractor would have to stay either within those red lines or any easements that we acquire. But when the right-of-way agent goes to negotiate with the owners, they'll have a map that'll show exactly where that line is, so you'll get an idea of where it is. And as Jeff mentioned, sometimes the contractors like to work side deals with nearby property owners, but that would definitely be completely separate from any state work. So that's more of just a side deal between two private individuals, and the process that I had spoke to during the presentation, that wouldn't apply to that.
All right, thanks, Matt. It looks like we did get a voicemail question asking us to explain the signal again. So the plan shown right now is stage 1 of construction. On the left side of the drawing, you could see a symbol there for one of the signals. Then on the right side, we've got 2 other signals. So there will be a signal in each direction along Route 154, then 1 signal for the driveway itself. Now, these would just be temporary. They wouldn't be permanent. They'll be removed once the project is closed. But basically, these are in place to ensure that there's no collisions or potentially dangerous scenarios when vehicles are traversing the project. So as mentioned before, it is alternating one way. So when one direction has a red light, the other direction along Route 154 will have the green light. They'll be allowed to clear the project site. And then again, once all vehicles are clear, the lights will shift to allow traffic coming from the other direction. And then the process goes on through that. There will be a detector on the signal looking towards the driveway. So if anybody is waiting to exit from the driveway, both directions on Route 154 would have the red light. So the person exiting from the private driveway there would be able to go in either direction without any fear of a vehicle coming directly head on to them or creating kind of any unsafe condition. I mean, that's our goal out here, is to make sure everybody's able to safely get through this without any incidents happening.
And Jeff, this is Mark Levesque again from CJM. I'd like to add too, with any temporary signals, we usually coordinate with the emergency services, such that if there was an emergency, that the signal would be triggered so that they could get safe passage before anybody else. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mark. And it looks like we received another voicemail question asking how long will each stage last. So the anticipated project is from the spring of 2022 to the fall of 2022, which gives us about 6 to 8 months to work in. Now, as far as the stage construction goes, it may take a month. We would start in April, and it might take a month before the stage 1 setup is installed, because we would need to install the temporary driveway, get any water handling set up, and any pre-stage work handled, relocation of utilities. So it may take a month and a half before that starts, and then for the project closeout, it may take a month or so to clean up the area after the stage construction has been removed. So each stage would run roughly 2 to 3 months, just as an estimate. Again, our design is very preliminary. We're still approaching the 30% design phase. But as a best guess right now, it's 2 to 3 months per stage. Now, one other thing I would like to bring up, as Sue had mentioned, this is one of the first, it's not the first, but it's one of our series of first presentations that we have been given virtually. So this is a fairly new process for us. We would appreciate your feedback. So if you liked it, if there's anything that we could improve on, we do ask that you fill out the survey at surveymonkey.com. Again, any information, any feedback, constructive criticism, it's all very helpful in making sure that we do better on any future presentations, or if there's anything that you didn't understand, we could, again, make it better in the future to ensure that these presentations go well. So again, we appreciate your time for filling that out. All right, it looks now like we are still waiting on a few comments to come in. We'll give it a few minutes, see if anything else comes in. If not, we would look to close the meeting. But again, we'll wait a few minutes to see if any others come in at the last minute, and we'll address those.
Hey, Jeff, this is Lou Bacho with DOT. Looks like we did get one other question that just popped up. I don't know if you can see, they asked a question about the 30% design phase. Not sure if you can see that or not.
Oh, yep. So sorry. Yes, that did just pop up. So basically, the way the process goes for design, we design in phases, usually starting from 30%, then later on it's 60s, 90s, and then 100%. So right now we are very preliminary. The 30% design phase just allows us to lay out the roadway, maintenance and protection of traffic, just kind of give us a broad idea what everything will look like, structure type, how traffic will be handled, just so that we see that what we're proposing does work, and then we fine tune that as design progresses. We, as mentioned before, we coordinate with utilities. There's rights of way coordination, and all of those elements kind of bring us towards 100%. So again, right now we're very preliminary. We're also using this whole process, the public information meeting, to get feedback in case there's any elements that might affect our design. So we would want to make sure that we incorporate those early on in the process instead of hitting the last minute like, we've got this big issue and we didn't anticipate it, and that delays the project. So again, we want to try to make sure all of that is vetted out early in the process so that it's a smooth transition as we head towards 100% design.
And this is Mark again from CJM. And one other thing I'd like to add is that we do a full environmental review at this early stage to make sure that there's no impacts to natural resources or water resources or any air or noise. And the project of this magnitude usually qualifies as a categorical exclusion under the NEPA process, which is the National Environmental Policy Act. And we make sure that anything that has any kind of federal funds, and we sometimes have federal funds in design, we have to follow that. But that's all part of the preliminary design, which we consider the 30% design phase of a project. And that's where we are right now.
All right, thanks again, Mark. All right, it looks like we're still looking to see if there's any other comments coming in. Again, I would like to remind everybody, there is the survey, and again, we would appreciate it if you could definitely give us your feedback. Let us know how we did. Let us know what could work better, where we could improve, or what did work. If there's something about the presentation that you especially like, let us know, and we could again be sure that we could work with that on future presentations as well. And again, I would also like to send the reminder that if you don't have any questions now but have questions later, the comment period is open through October 14th. So the chat will not be open until that time, but if you have, you could definitely send us your questions through email or telephone. Or again, if you just want to get additional information, feel free to use the project email, and we would definitely get back to you on that. Now, for our YouTube viewers, the survey is noted in the comments below, or sorry, in the description below the video. So if you need a link, that's where you would find it. Or again, you could type it in from the video, the presentation. All right, it doesn't look like any more questions are coming in. So at this time, it looks like we'll be closing the meeting. Again, we appreciate your time to attend. Thank you for your time for, excuse me. Thank you for taking the time to view this, just give us your questions. Again, if you could take the survey and let us know how it went, that's a big help. And again, if you have any other questions after this meeting, feel free to let us know. So once again, thank you. Thank you for your time. We definitely appreciate it.